What if the reason you're stuck isn't the world around you, but the truth you're avoiding inside you? What if happiness isn't something you find, but something you earn by facing what's uncomfortable? And what if the first step to building the life you want is tearing down the illusions that have kept you small? Let's begin with a reality most people won't tell you. Happiness isn't something you stumble upon, it's something you build. But before you can build anything meaningful, you have to clear the space. You have to face the clutter. And most of the time, what's standing in your way isn't fate or bad luck. It's denial. We spend years painting over discomfort with distractions. We mask reality with justifications, excuses, and half-truths. Why? Because the truth can sting. But here's the thing. Growth doesn't live in comfort. It lives in confrontation, the quiet kind, the kind that happens in still moments when you stop running, turn around, and face what's been following you. Because without acceptance, there's no clarity. And without clarity, peace will always feel out of reach. This isn't an episode designed to make you feel better for a moment. It's not sugar-coated. It's honest, maybe even a little sharp. These aren't comforting lessons. They're hard truths, but they're meant to wake you up. Some might challenge your ego. Others may stir something uncomfortable, and that's the point. Truth is rarely soft, but it is always liberating. Once you stop running from it, everything begins to change. In this video, we'll explore 12 harsh truths, not to discourage you, but to empower you, to help you stop waiting for life to happen, to stop blaming, pretending, or making yourself small, and instead to start living, eyes open, heart open, not perfectly, not pain-free, but powerfully. Because a happy life isn't something you find. It's something you choose. And truth is the soil it grows from. Truth one, you're not that important. It might sound harsh, maybe even like an insult. But what if this truth is actually a relief? Think about how much time we waste worrying about how we're perceived. We replay awkward conversations. We hold ourselves back to avoid embarrassment. We live under the weight of imagined judgment, constantly afraid someone is watching, critiquing, remembering. But here's the liberating reality. Most people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves, their worries, their insecurities, their mistakes, just like you. And no, it's not because people are selfish. It's because they're human. Each of us is the main character in our own mind, navigating a world that feels intensely personal, yet in reality is mostly indifferent. And when you understand this, you gain something powerful: freedom. Freedom from the need to impress, freedom from the fear of what others might think, freedom to simply be real, flawed, evolving, human. Even Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor ruling over millions, understood this. He wrote, "You shouldn't give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they don't care at all." He wasn't being cold. He was being clear. The world doesn't revolve around your mistakes. It doesn't pause when you're embarrassed. Life moves forward, and so should you. But why don't we? Why do we stay stuck in the fear of judgment? Because we want to matter. We want to feel significant. We want to believe our actions mean something. And that desire isn't wrong. But here's the twist. Significance doesn't come from being remembered. And that's the powerful truth we'll explore next. We ended with a liberating truth. You're not the center of everyone's world. And that's a gift. Because once you release the pressure to be important, you create space to be authentic. Significance doesn't come from being remembered. It comes from how you live, fully, honestly, with presence. It comes from showing up, not for applause, but for yourself. The world might forget what you said, what you wore, or even what you achieved, but you will remember how you lived. You'll carry the weight or the lightness of your choices. So what if you stopped trying to be impressive and started being intentional? What if you let go of the need to polish your life for a crowd that isn't even paying attention and began crafting it for an audience of one? You. This truth isn't here to minimize you. It's here to free you. Because the moment you stop needing to be important, you become powerful. You become brave enough to try and fail, bold enough to speak even when your voice shakes, humble enough to grow even when it's uncomfortable. You stop fearing judgment, not because it disappears, but because it no longer has power over you. So ask yourself this: how much of your energy goes toward managing other people's perceptions of you? And what would your life look like if you took that energy back, if you redirected it inward into becoming someone you admire, someone you trust? Because what matters most isn't that the world remembers your name. It's that you don't forget who you are. Truth too, not everyone is going to like you. Have you ever bent yourself just to fit into someone else's mold? It doesn't happen all at once. It starts quietly, subtly. Maybe you laugh at a joke that doesn't feel right. Maybe you stay quiet when something makes your skin crawl. Maybe you say yes when every fiber of your being wants to scream no. And in the moment, it feels harmless. You convince yourself you're just being nice, agreeable, easy to get along with. But over time, something starts to break. You realize you've been trading your authenticity for approval. You've been offering tiny pieces of yourself in exchange for temporary acceptance. And slowly, silently, you've been disappearing. The truth is tough, but necessary. Not everyone is going to like you. No matter how kind, thoughtful, generous, or careful you are, there will always be someone who criticizes you, misunderstands you, or flat out rejects you. And that's not a reflection of your worth. It's just part of being human. Because most people aren't reacting to your truth. They're reacting through the filter of their own fears, their insecurities, their unresolved stories. You were never meant to carry all of that. Epictetus said it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Your truth, your growth, your peace, it might make someone else uncomfortable. They might resist it. They might resist you. But growth means accepting that. It means being okay with not being everyone's favorite because you're finally becoming your own. Even nature understands this. The individual has always had to struggle to not be overwhelmed by the tribe. There's a constant pull to fit in, to blend, to avoid making waves. But the price of universal approval is often invisibility. You start to vanish behind the expectations of others and mistake that for connection. But that's not love. That's performance. So what's the alternative? Radical honesty, not the kind that seeks to provoke, but the kind that refuses to shrink. The kind that says, I'd rather be disliked for being real than praised for being fake. That's the shift where real confidence is born. Not from being liked, but from being seen, fully, truly, and still standing tall. And from here, we'll step into the next truth. You are not your thoughts. In the last section, we face the hard truth. Not everyone will like you. And that's not rejection, it's reality. Now here's the gift that comes with that acceptance. Because once you stop trying to be liked by everyone, something beautiful begins to happen. You create space for the right people to come closer. The ones who see you, not the polished version, not the performance, but you. The ones who resonate with your truth. The ones who love you, not in spite of your authenticity, but because of it. They challenge you, support you, and most importantly, they allow you to be yourself. So here's the question. Are you shaping your life to be admired or to be lived? Because every time you water yourself down to keep others comfortable, every time you mold yourself into someone more likable but less you, you drift a little further from who you were meant to become. But every time you stand in your truth, even if it unsettles others, you step closer to freedom, to peace, to real confidence. Not everyone will like you, and that's okay. That's not a flaw, that's life. Accepting that truth is where self-respect truly begins. Truth 3, you are not defined by what you have. Let's go deeper. What happens when the applause fades? When the job title disappears? When the shiny car doesn't impress anyone anymore? In a world that screams your worth is your wardrobe, your following, your income, it's easy to forget who you actually are. You start to measure yourself by numbers, by status symbols, by external validation. And without realizing it, you begin building a life that looks impressive, but feels hollow. But here's the truth. You are not what you have. You are what you live. You are what you believe. You are what you build in the quiet, private spaces no one sees. Seneca, a philosopher who had it all, wealth, status, power, once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." That craving, that endless hunger for more. That's what we've been trained to chase. We buy things to patch emotional holes. We pursue image to drown out insecurity, but it never truly satisfies. Because deep down, what we're really longing for isn't more stuff. It's wholeness. It's peace. Not the kind that comes from having everything, but the kind that comes from needing less. Carl Jung added another powerful layer. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Why? Because it means standing in front of the mirror. Without your job, your status, your labels, or your likes, and asking, am I enough without all the extras? And most people avoid that question for a lifetime because it forces them to confront a fear that without the house, without the attention, without the applause, they might feel empty. But that fear, it's a lie. Who you are isn't found in your possessions. It's found in your principles, in your integrity, in how you treat others when there's nothing to gain, in how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening, in how you show up, not when it's easy, but when it's hard, not for the spotlight, but because it's the right thing to do. And here's the irony. The moment you stop defining yourself by what you have, you start attracting the things that actually matter. Respect, authentic connection, inner peace. Not because you're chasing them, but because you're finally aligned. And from here, we continue to the next truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. We ended with a powerful reminder. You are not what you have. You are what you've chosen, endured, and grown into. And that realization opens the door to something even more liberating. Choice. But first, imagine this. What would your life look like if you no longer needed to impress anyone? If you no longer felt ashamed for not having what others seem to possess? If you stopped asking, how much is enough? And started asking, what's worth my energy, my time, my life? That shift from chasing to choosing, that is freedom. So here's your challenge. Take an honest look at the parts of your identity that are tied to your image. Are they truly you, or are they just armor? Are you living or performing? What would it feel like to put that armor down, even just a little, to stop curating and start being? Because real value, it's not loud. It doesn't wear labels. It doesn't need an audience. Real value lives in the quiet decisions, the ones you make when no one's watching, in the moments you choose what's true over what looks good. You are not what you have. You are what you've overcome. You are what you believe in. You are who you're still becoming. Truth 4, you always have a choice. How often do you forget that? Not in the political or legal sense, but in the deeply personal, often invisible sense. The kind of freedom that doesn't live in your environment. It lives in your response. Because while you can't always control what happens to you always have a choice in what you do next. That space between what happens to you and how you respond, that's where your power lives. And yet most people give that power away without even realizing it. It's easy to feel helpless when life crashes in, when plans collapse, when someone leaves, when things feel wildly unfair. And in those moments, your mind starts whispering, I have no choice. But that voice, that's not truth. That's fear disguised as logic, because you do have a choice. Maybe not over everything, but always over something. Your next word, your next thought, your next breath, your next step. Epictetus captured it perfectly. Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. It's not just the hardship that breaks us. It's the story we tell ourselves about the hardship. This shouldn't be happening. This always happens to me. I'll never get out of this. But those thoughts, they're not facts. They're interpretations. And interpretations are choices, most of which we make without noticing. The beauty of choice is that it's always available, in any moment, in any mess. Even when the world feels out of control, you can pause and ask, what do I still control? What can I choose right now, even if it's small? Carl Jung offered a powerful reflection. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Read that again. Let it sink in. That's the difference between being a victim of life and being the author of your story. Because yes, things will happen that you didn't ask for. Yes, you'll be hurt in ways you didn't deserve. But what you do with that pain, how you carry it, how you rise from it, how you become through it, that part is yours. And here's a truth most people miss. Indecision is also a choice. Waiting, hesitating, holding back, hoping life will change before you do. That's still a decision. So what if you made a new one? And that brings us to the next truth. You don't need more time. You need more intention. Previously, we learned that inaction is still a decision. And sometimes the most powerful changes begin not with a dramatic move, but with reclaiming that quiet choice. Every moment you stay silent when you want to speak, every time you hold back when you're meant to step forward, every instance where fear calls the shots instead of your clarity, those are all choices. And if you're not conscious of them, your life can quietly become a reflection, not of what you did, but of what you didn't do. Not because you weren't capable, but because you forgot you could choose. But not all choices feel life-changing in the moment. Some are subtle. It's choosing to pause and breathe instead of reacting with heat. It's choosing to say the honest thing, even if your voice shakes. It's walking away from what's draining, even if it feels familiar. It's showing up today as the version of yourself that's trying to emerge, not the one clinging to yesterday. So ask yourself, in that situation that's been stressing you out the most, what are you pretending you don't have a choice about? And what would change if you just took back that one small choice? Because freedom doesn't always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like ownership, like presence, like quietly whispering to yourself, I can't change the world, but I can change this. Truth 5, your feelings are caused by your thoughts. Now here's a deeper shift. What if the pain you're feeling isn't because of what happened, but because of what you believed it meant? That's a difficult truth to sit with, because when we hurt, our instinct is to point outward. The rude comment, the missed opportunity, the breakup, the failure. We tell ourselves, that's why I feel this way. But if you look closer, you'll see your emotion didn't come from the event itself. It came from the story you told yourself about the event. And that's where everything begins to shift. Marcus Aurelius once said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. You don't see life as it is. You see it through the lens of what you believe. And if that lens is fogged by fear, insecurity, or resentment, then every experience is tinted by distortion. You're not feeling the event itself, you're feeling your interpretation of it. And that interpretation, it's often rooted in past wounds, not present truth. Think about it. Two people can go through the exact same situation. One sees failure, the other sees feedback. One spirals into anxiety, the other steps into clarity. What changed? Not the event, but the thought, the meaning, the narrative, the lens. Now, this isn't about denying your emotions. It's about understanding where they come from. Because once you realize your thoughts are the engine behind your emotions, you unlock a kind of quiet power most people never claim. The power to pause, to question, to reframe, to choose a thought that aligns with who you want to become, not who you've been conditioned to be. Let's say you get rejected by a job, a person, an opportunity. The default thought might be, I'm not good enough. And that thought triggers shame. But what if you paused and asked, is that really true? Or is that just my old fear talking? You could choose a different thought. Maybe this wasn't aligned. Maybe this is redirection, not rejection. And that leads us right into our next truth. Your mind is not your enemy until you let it be. In the last section, we learned that your emotions don't come from events. They come from the stories you tell yourself about those events. And when you change the story, everything begins to shift. Suddenly the emotion softens, not because the rejection changed, but because your relationship with it did. That's the real inner work. It's not about forcing yourself to feel better. It's about going deeper, understanding your feelings at their root, seeing how your mind colors your reality, and then choosing that palette with greater awareness. But here's something else you need to know. The mind loves familiarity. It will cling to old narratives, even painful ones, simply because they're known. If you've spent years living under a story like I'm a failure or nothing ever works out for me, your brain will find ways to prove that story true. Not because it's accurate, but because it's familiar, until you consciously, repeatedly, deliberately challenge it. That's why thought work isn't a one-time mindset shift. It's not a motivational quote. It's a daily practice, a quiet revolution that takes place inside your own head. So next time you feel anxious, defeated, angry, or overwhelmed, pause. Instead of reacting automatically, ask yourself, what thought is behind this feeling? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is there a better thought I could choose instead? Because if you want to feel differently, you don't have to wait for life to change. You can begin by changing the story. And now we arrive at another hard truth. If you don't learn to be accountable, life will hold you accountable for you. Have you ever blamed the world for a life you quietly chose? It's tempting, isn't it? To point outward when things go wrong. To say, they let me down. Life isn't fair. It's just bad luck. But beneath those surface statements often lies something harder to face. That somewhere along the line, we made a choice, or avoided one, and now we're living the consequence. Accountability isn't about assigning blame, it's about ownership. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to rescue or fix your life, that's the moment your healing begins. The moment you stop blaming your past for where you are, that's the moment your power comes back. Because as long as you see yourself as a victim of circumstance, you remain powerless to change your future. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, freedom is the will to be responsible to ourselves. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's standing tall and owning the results of your actions. Without excuses, without projection, without needing someone else to carry the burden of your choices. And here's the part many avoid. Life will always hold you accountable. If you avoid dealing with your unhealthy habits, your health eventually will. If you avoid taking responsibility for your relationships, conflict will. If you avoid facing your truth, Your inner peace will begin to unravel. Life is patient, but it's honest. What you avoid today becomes the lesson you can't escape tomorrow. But here's the good news. You don't need to be perfect to be accountable. You need humility. You need courage. You need the willingness to say, I messed up, and I'm ready to do better. That's not weakness, that's strength. A strength most people never develop because it's easier to blame than to build. But nothing grows in blame. Growth requires light, and that light only comes from one place, truth. And speaking of truth, let's talk about the one that almost no one wants to admit. You will outgrow people, and that doesn't make you wrong. We just explored the power of accountability, how owning your role in your current reality is the first step toward transforming it. Now let's talk about what happens when that transformation starts to show, and not everyone around you is ready for it. So take a moment and ask yourself, which area of your life feels out of control right now? Is it your finances, your health, your relationships, your self-worth? Then ask without judgment, how am I contributing to this? What have I been avoiding? What's one small shift I could make today? Because accountability isn't about beating yourself up. It's not about shame. It's about leadership. It's standing in the mirror and saying, maybe I didn't create all of this, but I'm the only one who can decide what comes next. And once you begin to lead yourself, your life starts to shift. Not all at once. Not in a movie moment transformation, but quietly, steadily, with every honest decision, with every time you stop running from the mirror and face it instead. Because if you don't choose to be accountable, life will make the choice for you. Truth 7. People want you to do well, just not better than them. Have you ever noticed how support from others feels strongest at the beginning? They cheer your first steps. They celebrate your potential. They're there for the dream. But what happens when the dream becomes real? You get the job. You build momentum. You rise, not just in hope, but in results. And suddenly, the energy shifts. The claps get quieter. The jokes get sharper. The encouragement starts to feel conditional. This is one of the most painful lessons in growth. Not everyone who starts the journey with you will celebrate where you're going. And no, it's not always jealousy. It's not always malicious. Sometimes your progress shines a light on someone else's stagnation. Your boldness reminds them of their fears. Your evolution disrupts the comfort of what was. Instead of examining that discomfort, some people project it onto you. Seneca once said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. But that kind of learning, the kind that changes your life, comes with a cost. And often that cost is outgrowing people, outgrowing expectations, outgrowing environments that once felt safe, not because you're better, but because you've stopped settling. Carl Jung once described relationships as chemical reactions. When two elements meet, something changes. Growth creates tension, and transformation demands that one or both of you evolve. Some people will rise with you, others will resist your rise, afraid of what it means for them. And here's the test. How will you respond? Will you shrink to make others comfortable? Will you downplay your success to keep the peace? Will you sabotage your progress to maintain old connections? These choices may look like love, but they're quiet betrayals. Because every time you limit your potential for someone else's ego, you abandon the person you're becoming. True support doesn't flinch when you grow. It doesn't compete. It doesn't compare. It doesn't try to control your pace. It cheers for your evolution, even if it means growing apart. And while that kind of support is rare, it's worth seeking. Because next we'll explore one more hard truth. The path to healing is not linear, and it won't always look like progress. In the last truth, we uncovered a reality that's as challenging as it is empowering. You might outgrow certain people, and that's okay. The key is learning to protect your growth, not by closing off, but by choosing alignment over attachment. And most importantly, it's worth giving yourself permission to grow. Because when you truly want others to rise, their success doesn't threaten yours. You stop competing, you stop shrinking, you begin to cheer, not compare. That's real maturity. That's real freedom. So how do you protect your growth? By being honest. Honest about who you're becoming and who is no longer aligned with that path. Not with resentment, not with superiority, but with clarity. You protect your evolution by surrounding yourself with people who aren't afraid of your light, by letting go of dynamics that only survive when you're playing small, by learning to clap for yourself, even if the room goes silent. Ask yourself, are you dimming your light to keep people close? Are you mistaking comfort for loyalty? Are you holding back your own growth because you're afraid of walking the path alone? Because here's the truth. Yes, you might outgrow some people, but you will never outgrow yourself. And the more you honor that, the more you'll attract those who don't just tolerate your growth, they inspire it. Truth 8, there is no perfect time to do anything. Now let's talk about the lie that keeps most dreams stuck in neutral, waiting for the right moment. How long have you been waiting? For the right energy, the right plan, the right version of yourself? You tell yourself, I just need a little more time. Once I figure everything out, maybe when I feel more ready. But here's the hard truth. That perfect moment, it doesn't exist. It never has. And the longer you wait for it, the more life quietly slips past you in the disguise of hesitation. Inaction begins to feel comfortable. But comfort isn't the same as progress. Perfection is a moving target. And most of the time, it's just fear, dressed as strategy. Because if you can convince yourself that you're not ready, you don't have to risk failing. You don't have to step into uncertainty. You don't have to take responsibility. But here's the thing. Every dream, every goal, every better version of yourself waiting to be born lives on the other side of action, not planning, not thinking, not waiting, doing. Epictetus asked a question that shakes the soul. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? That's not a quote for motivation. It's a call out. How long will you postpone the life you want, pretending the delay is preparation, when really it's avoidance? Think about it. That version of you who feels ready to launch that business, write that book, change that habit, that version doesn't exist yet. Because confidence doesn't come before the leap. It's born in the leap year. You don't become brave, then act. You act, and that's how you become brave. We wait for clarity, but forget that clarity comes from movement. We look for signs, when often the very act of starting is the sign. It's in the messy beginnings, the imperfect first steps, the uncertain progress, that the path reveals itself. Yes, you'll make mistakes. Yes, you'll doubt yourself. Yes, you'll be tempted to quit, but you'll also learn. You'll grow. You'll stretch in ways that standing still could never offer you, because that's the gift of beginning. It doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees transformation. So ask yourself, what have you been putting off, waiting for the stars to align? And who might you become if you stopped waiting and started doing? Because time, it's not waiting. Life, it's not pausing. And in the next truth, we'll confront what happens when you let your past become your future. If you don't heal it, you'll repeat it. Previously, we challenged the myth of perfect timing and realized that waiting often masks fear, not strategy. Now let's look at what happens when you do take that first step and then glance sideways. Because the longer you wait, the more regret quietly takes root. Not because you failed, but because you never gave yourself the chance to succeed. There is no perfect time. There is only now. and now is always the most honest place to begin. Truth 9. Someone will always have it better or worse than you. Have you ever felt genuinely proud of yourself, only to have that feeling evaporate the moment you look sideways? Maybe you completed a difficult project. Maybe you started taking care of your health. Maybe you simply had a peaceful, joyfully uneventful day. And for a brief moment, you felt whole, content, aligned. But then you opened your phone. You saw someone with a bigger house, a better body, a faster timeline, someone younger doing more, someone older with fewer scars. And just like that, your quiet fulfillment vanished, replaced by doubt, insecurity, a whisper in your head saying, "You should be further along by now." Here's a truth many of us learn too late, if we ever learn it at all. Someone will always have it better than you, and someone will always have it worse. If you tie your self-worth to your place on that invisible ladder, your joy will always be unstable because the ladder never ends. The rankings keep changing. And no matter how high you climb, someone will always be standing higher. Marcus Aurelius once warned, "Don't waste time wondering what a good person is. Just be one." That wisdom becomes even more urgent in today's world of endless comparison. Because comparison isn't just distracting, it's distorting. It pulls you out of your own lane. It makes you forget what you were building and why. And here's the harsh truth about comparison. It's rarely about reality. It's about illusion. You're measuring your raw, unfiltered moments against someone else's curated highlight reel. Their polished smile against your private struggle, their filtered perfection against your unfinished story. But here's what you don't see: the anxiety behind their achievement, the loneliness behind their lifestyle, the pressure behind their presentation. You forget that behind every seemingly perfect life is a whole person, flawed, anxious, unsure, just like you. And when it comes to those who have it worse, using someone else's pain to dismiss your own is just another form of avoidance. It's self-neglect in disguise. Yes, gratitude matters. Yes, perspective is powerful. But your pain doesn't need to be ranked to be real. You don't have to be at rock bottom to deserve growth. And you don't need to be at the top to earn your rest. So what's the alternative? Start measuring your life against you. Not who you wish you were, but who you used to be. Are you more patient than you were last year? More disciplined than you were last month? More honest than you were yesterday? That's progress. That's growth. That's the only comparison that brings peace instead of destroying it. Ask yourself, when was the last time I looked at my own life with appreciation instead of judgment? When was the last time I saw myself clearly, without the filter of someone else's success? Because comparison will always exist, but how much power it has over you, that's a choice. And speaking of choices, let's explore the next truth. You don't need more motivation. You need more discipline. We just uncovered a liberating truth. Comparison fades the moment you stop racing others and start honoring your own growth. Now let's talk about the invisible force that keeps you stuck in place, even when you know you're meant for more, because the moment you stop trying to keep up, you finally start catching up to yourself. You don't need to be better than anyone. You just need to be unapologetically, fully, honestly yourself. And that is always enough. Truth 10, fear will keep you from living. Pause for a moment and ask, what would your life look like if fear had never interrupted it? Think about it. All the words you didn't say, all the risks you didn't take, all the dreams you filed away into the maybe someday drawer, not because they were impossible, but because you were afraid. Afraid to fail, afraid to look foolish, afraid to lose something safe in the pursuit of something uncertain. But here's a truth that most people avoid their entire lives. Fear doesn't stop bad things from happening, it just stops you from living. Seneca put it with piercing clarity: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Fear creates mental movies, high definition, surround sound, worst case scenarios. You sit in the theater of what ifs while real life passes by just outside the door. You miss the moments. You delay the growth. You shrink your world until it feels safe, but slowly that same safety starts to suffocate your potential. But here's what changes everything. Fear, when faced, and transforms. Because fear is rarely just a warning, it's often a signal. You're not afraid of things that don't matter to you. You're afraid of the things that do. If you fear being seen, it's because you want to be known. If you fear failure, it's because success means something to you. Fear doesn't lie, but it doesn't always tell the whole truth either. And unless you challenge it, it becomes your compass. But there's a better compass. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And maybe that's the secret. Fear loses its grip when you remember your why, when your purpose becomes louder than your panic, when your vision is clearer than your hesitation. Because courage, it's not the absence of fear, it's choosing to act in spite of it. It's walking forward, heart pounding, knees shaking, because staying stuck is no longer an option. So how do you start? You begin small. You do the thing that scares you, even if it's awkward. You speak up, even if your voice trembles. You send the message, make the call, apply for the thing, share the truth, even if your hands are cold with doubt. Because with each action, you prove something powerful. Fear is not fatal. Failure won't destroy you. Discomfort won't last forever. But regret lingers. And that's what most people never realize. The more you obey fear, the stronger it becomes. It feeds on avoidance. It grows with every moment you let it run the show. But the moment you stop running, the moment you turn around and face it, fear begins to shrink. Slowly, quietly, consistently. And in that shrinking, something else begins to rise. Your courage. And in the next truth, we'll talk about what you must let go of in order to rise. You can't heal in the same environment that broke you. In the last truth, we uncovered something crucial. Fear may never fully disappear, but it also doesn't have to be in control. You can move forward with trembling hands and a brave heart, because fear is not your driver, not anymore. So ask yourself, what part of my life has been quietly ruled by fear? What have I avoided, postponed, or hidden from? Not because I couldn't, but because I was afraid to try. And then ask, what would my life look like if I stopped waiting for fear to disappear and just started moving anyway? Because fear may always walk beside you, but it doesn't get to drive. Truth 11. Your expectations are what cause disappointment. Take a moment to reflect. How much pain in your life has come not from what actually happened, but from what you thought should have happened? We all carry around a silent script, a mental checklist of how things are supposed to go, how people are supposed to treat us, how our plans are supposed to unfold. And when life doesn't follow the script, when reality deviates, we suffer. Not because life failed us, but because we projected an illusion onto it and called that illusion truth. Disappointment doesn't come from the world. It comes from your expectations of it. When someone doesn't meet your standards, when a goal takes longer than you hoped, when a relationship ends before you were ready, it feels like betrayal. But often, it's just misalignment, a disconnect between what is and what you demanded it be. Epictetus said it clearly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And your reaction? It's shaped by expectation. If you expect life to be fair, you'll feel resentment. If you expect people to never disappoint you, you'll feel abandoned. If you expect every effort to result in instant success, you'll feel defeated. But if you expect reality to be real, messy, imperfect, human, then you create space. Space for compassion, for flexibility, for growth. Here's the tricky part. Expectations often wear the mask of hope, but they're not the same. Hope is open-handed. Expectation grips tightly. Hope says, I'd love for this to happen, but I'll be okay if it doesn't. Expectation says, this must happen, or else. And that or else is often where pain lives. In the disappointment, the bitterness, the silent blame. So how do you break free? You replace expectation with intention. You show up fully. You give your best. You speak honestly. You do the work. And then you let go of the outcome. Not to become passive, but to become peaceful. You can dream big without demanding the dream unfold your way. You can love others without controlling their choices. You can have a plan without needing life to follow your map line by line. This is the Stoic approach. Act with virtue, lead with discipline, and then release your grip. Not because you don't care, but because you don't cling. So ask yourself, where in my life am I holding on too tightly? Where have I confused hope with entitlement? Where am I suffering, not because of what is, but because of what I expected it to be? Because when you release the need for life to obey your rules, you don't lose control. You gain clarity. You gain peace. And in our final truth, we'll return to where all transformation begins. You can't become who you're meant to be by staying who you've been. Once you release the grip of expectations, something powerful happens. You begin to respond instead of react. And in that space, between what is and how you choose to meet it, life softens. It becomes more spacious, more alive. Because the less you demand, the more you're able to experience. Truth 12. You live the life you create for yourself. What if everything about the life you're living right now, every habit, every relationship, every routine, is not just something that happened to you, but something you've allowed, chosen, and repeated? It's a hard truth to face because we're taught to believe life just happens, that our circumstances are inherited, that our challenges are external, that our suffering is the fault of what others did or failed to do. But eventually there comes a quiet, undeniable moment of reckoning when you realize your life is yours. You are not simply living it. You are creating it moment by moment. Now let's be clear. That doesn't mean everything is your fault. Life brings injustice. It brings trauma, heartbreak, grief, none of which you asked for. But what you do next, how you interpret it, how you respond, how you rise, how you rebuild, that part, that's entirely yours and no one can do it for you. Carl Jung said it beautifully. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. We spend so much time searching outward for answers, for approval, for a sign. But the shift begins when you finally turn inward and ask, what am I building and why? Because victimhood, while comfortable, is a trap. It gives you a story. It gives you someone to blame. It gives you a reason to stay stuck, but it steals your agency. Because as long as your life is someone else's responsibility, you remain powerless to change it. But you are not powerless. You're shaping your life right now. With every thought you entertain, with every word you speak, with every boundary you set or don't, with every choice you make day after day. So the real question isn't, am I creating my life? It's, what kind of life am I creating? Is it built on fear or intention, on avoidance or vision, on reaction or responsibility? You don't need to have everything figured out to begin again. You just need to get honest. Start small. Make one decision today that aligns with the life you say you want. One shift, one step, one boundary, one brave yes, one powerful no. Because real change doesn't come from giant leaps. It comes from quiet, consistent alignment. So ask yourself, if I woke up tomorrow with a blank slate, no expectations, no guilt, no fear, what kind of life would I begin building? And more importantly, what's stopping me from starting that today? You are not stuck. You are just repeating. And once you see that, you can choose differently. You can design a life that reflects your values, not your fears. You can release roles that no longer fit. You can stop running on autopilot and start creating from intention. You can let go of what drains you and make space for what lights you up. Because in the end, your life, it's not something you find. It's something you build from the inside out. And now, as we close this journey, let's pause and reflect on what we've uncovered. Not to overwhelm, but to remind you, every single truth we've explored was never about judgment. It was about awakening. Shall we close this script with the final summary and call to action? Your life is something you build, and like any meaningful structure, it always begins with a single, conscious choice. So now you've heard them, 12 truths, not sweetened to soothe your ego, but sharpened to set your mind free. They don't promise comfort. They offer you something far more lasting, clarity. And in that clarity, a new kind of doorway opens. Because once you stop resisting what's true, you stop merely surviving and start shaping. Shaping a life not from fear or habit, but from the inside out, with presence, with intention, with strength. These truths were never meant to discourage you. They were meant to liberate you from the quiet lies that have quietly held you back. The lie that everyone is watching. The lie that you must be liked by everyone to matter. The lie that your worth lives in how much you achieve, accumulate, or prove. But here's the deeper truth. You never needed to become someone else. You only needed permission, your own, to become fully you. Yes, truth can be harsh, but it's also healing. Because once you face what's real, you stop building your life on sand. You stop waiting for someone to choose you. You stop chasing versions of yourself that were never yours to begin with. You stop living secondhand. The Stoics knew this. Carl Jung knew this. Enza knew this. They all understood that happiness isn't found in fantasy. It's born from facing reality and still choosing to live on purpose, with courage, with clarity, with discipline and depth. So now let these truths sit with you. Let them unsettle what no longer serves you. Let them disrupt what you've outgrown. And then let them guide you, not into a life that just looks good from the outside, but into one that feels right on the inside. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And if this episode gave you something to reflect on, something that helped you see more clearly, feel less alone, or even just wake up a little deeper, then consider subscribing. Share this with someone who's ready for truth, not fluff, and tell us which truth hit you the hardest. Because remember this, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. And once you are, that's when life truly begins.